keeping in constant contact with the client and then finding out how that design's performed, finding out if it's returned on their investment. That's probably the biggest measure that you can get from your design, finding out if what the client has spent has brought a return of investment. So my name's JackRoyle. I'm a graphic designer and illustrator from Sheffield, and my niche is illustrating everyday objects. I started my Instagram page when I finished university. I've been posting on there almost every day for around 4 or 5 years. I originally started it just to make my portfolio, make it bigger and better. But since I've got a job, I've just carried on posting there. So I believe in keeping things simple, and should always just try out new things and put it out there and see what goes down well. But yeah, I just enjoy illustrating stuff, really. That's pretty much how I started it. Just came from a passion. Well, when I was a kid, I always enjoyed illustrating stuff. I was always drawing, and art was something that I took all the way through school. But I preferred branding and illustrating parts of my project rather than designing the actual product. So from there, I started to try and get my first job in graphic design and illustration. So I would say it's just from illustrating when I was a kid, really. That's where it's all stemmed from. I would say probably the most important thing to always do is to create things out of passion rather than anything else. So it should come from what you want to create and what you want to put out there. That's probably the main bit of advice I would give. Another one would be, while it is good to sort of look at other designers' work and see what styles they use and what works for them, it's also important to do a bit of work and figure out what kind of style you want to put out there as well. Because the one thing that can't get taken away from you is your own personal taste and input. So I would say just follow what you think is right from the start and just work with it. And one other thing, even though we just said a style is important, is to not just chase after the style. The style will find you ultimately. If you go looking for it, you're only going to end up just not finding it. It should just come naturally. When it comes to like technology, like electronic tools, I would say find which one you feel most comfortable in. So I use the Adobe programs just because I've used them for a very long time. But with technology programs, there's no saying that in 10, 15 years time, there might not be an Adobe around. It might be someone else. So like when it comes to technology tools, just be really flexible, always be willing to learn new tools because they're going to come and go. But from looking around, most of those tools, they stay the same. They just have a little bit of difference between them. When you get a brief if it's from a client or if you're just looking at a general brief online, try and pick bits out of that brief that aren't stated. So your job as a designer really should be to add extra value to a brief, because they're coming to you for your design thinking. Kind of just let clients come to me, because I find it puts you in almost a better position really. If they've come to you for the work, it feels a lot less like you're trying to negotiate with them and more like you're trying to collaborate with them if they come to you. But if they're not coming to you, then I would strongly recommend finding out key people to email in that workplace and then emailing them and just offering designer like help. I wouldn't go in saying, can we do some work together? I would just email them offering your design services as a whole and then letting them get back to you. I'm quite a firm believer of you should try and keep up with trends. Like I do look at websites such as Dribble, Medium. There's another one I use called Inspiration Grid. Just general websites. So I do try and keep up with trends, but I also try not to let trends dictate my work, because trends are going to come and go all the time. So it's kind of, if you just try and keeping up with trends, then you're kind of always going to have to keep updating it. Whereas if you just find your own rhythm, then you're not reliant on trends to sort of come up with the next bit of work. When you do see some work that inspires you, you automatically start thinking about how you would recreate it. If you do see a bit of work that inspires you, just look at it and see how you would approach that piece of work. Like if you want to make it a little bit more witty, or you want to incorporate some more typography, or if you want to take an illustration piece and simplify it and make it more of a logo or branding piece, put your own twist on it, I would say. That would be the main difference between being inspired and creating your own work. When you're working with a client, it's important to get feedback almost at every stage of the project, really. So, because they're paying you for the work, so it needs to be work that they feel happy with, not just work that you feel happy with. So if it's a client, normally I will start doing some rough concepts. Like if they want an illustration-based project, I'll get to the point where we've got the main outline done, and then I'll send it over to them for feedback. When it comes to feedback online, I normally just have a flick through the comments and see what people have said and what people have messaged. And then if there's any feedback that sort of stands out, then I'll always try and look at incorporating that. I think it's just taking feedback in that sounds feasible and on the right track. You were talking about like creative freedom. I think that's another reason why I still post on my Instagram account, because that is kind of my place for creative freedom. So I can use that to post whatever I want. But then when it comes to client work, I think you always have to bear in mind that you are giving up your creative freedom. There isn't really creative freedom on a client project. It's more, you've got to get what the client wants, essentially. They're coming to you for your design style and thinking, but the freedom is mostly in their hands. I think it's important to always keep a list of things that you need to do. So breaking stuff down by the days in the week that you are going to be working on client work. So I normally work on client work Monday to Friday alongside my full-time job. So it's figuring out what projects have the shortest timelines, when they need to be sent, writing them all down on the list, and then sort of ordering them in priority order. So if I've got 3 projects on and one project I need to get the first concepts over in 2 days, another project to finish off by the Friday, and another project to get concepts over for the Wednesday. And then I'd also prioritize big jobs over small jobs. So get your big jobs out of the way first, and then the small jobs that take less time. In terms of putting things online, I try and not look at the metrics, because I don't know, they can fluctuate between post to post. So I think it's always it's not really the best thing to measure design success by. When it comes to actual client work, I would say it's once you've done a piece of design work, don't see that as that's me done, that's me finished with the project. I think it's important to check up with the client about that piece of work, find out if everything's been okay with it, whether they've actually used it yet, because sometimes you can do design work that doesn't get used for about 3-4 months down the line. So I think it's keeping in constant contact with the client and then finding out how that design's performed, finding out if it's returned on their investment. That's probably the biggest measure that you can get from your design, finding out if what the client has spent has brought a return of investment. I think it's most important to sort of start it how you want, and then if it's your own personal work, only you will know when it's done. I think you can get stuck down a bit of a rabbit hole of constantly trying to redo work till it's perfect, but there is no perfect. Nothing's ever perfect. What work you do now, you'll look at a year down the line and think there's loads of things I would change for that. So for personal work, I would say just attack it with a good concept and what you think is right. And when you think it is finished, I would say it's finished and put it out there. With client work, so when you think it is finished, start showing it to the client. And then once you are starting to do feedback, it kind of is up to the client as to when it's finished. It just depends on how you're taking the feedback on and incorporating that as to how quickly it is going to be finished. It depends really. If I'm doing a branding project, then I think the colours need to represent the characteristics of that brand and what the audience is for that brand. When it comes to illustration, when it comes to my personal colour choice, I normally just go with what feels right. My biggest inspiration is looking at the work of other designers, really, how they're changing their styles, what they're posting about, what client work they're doing, how they're evolving as a person, really. So I'd say that's one of my biggest inspirations, just seeing what my peers are doing. I'd say my biggest fear is just not growing as a person through my designs. So I feel like I put my personality out through my designs. So if my personality does change, my designs are going to change. And I think that's normal for everyone. So the one fear I have is just not progressing and developing. I would say one big roadblock I had was trying to keep up with, because I started off posting content every day online. And while that was good for me to start getting my first jobs in and things like that and established in design, when that all did happen, it got very hard to juggle both of them alongside extra client work, alongside a job, and then trying to create a picture every day to post. I think in terms of overcoming it, I think it's just remembering that at the end of the day, you are human and you're going to come across roadblocks. So I think it's attacking those roadblocks with your head and being sensible and not just trying to like push through it and carry on. Realize that there is an issue and just try and approach it that's going to be the best for your health. Thank you for tuning in and listening. I've been Jack, and it's been great speaking to you all, and just stay positive. Thank you very much.